Fantasy Focus Football presented by NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. My name is Daniel Dopp, here with the entire crew. Field Yates, Stephania Bell, Mike Clay. We got everyone here lined up to help you guys get your Week 3 lineup set. Most importantly, though, we're going to talk about that Jets game last night. Fields got a little bit of fire to bring our way, I know, so I'm very excited about that.
I'm not interested in that. I don't want to hear anything about
Uninterested in that.
I know where it's
Mike,
going.
you can leave the show. Have a nice Friday. Enjoy it.
We did our part 1 of the preview for Week 3 yesterday. Go ahead and check that out on the Thursday show. If you want to go back, listen to a handful of things that Mike Field and I did. It was a very fun show. And also make sure you check out Fantasy Football Now, like we do every single Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., ESPN2, making sure that you are set up to go with everything that you need. Before we get started, do you guys mind if I do one thing very quickly?
Have at it.
Well, it depends. What's the thing?
My wonderful wife has a birthday tomorrow. Oh. I just want to say, Rosie, happy birthday. I love you so much. I am so grateful to be able to be your husband, to have someone so compassionate and amazing. And like you're smart, you're beautiful, you're intelligent, you're all the things that I can never be, and I'm so grateful to be able to have you in my life. So I love you, babe. I hope you have an awesome birthday weekend.
Now I know why you started Andre Stevenson against her in fantasy.
That was it. That was
Makes
it.
more sense.
More than anything, she's 2-0 in her fantasy league. I couldn't be more proud of that for
But
what.
she's better than you at fantasy football also.
You know what, Stephania?
Yeah.
I did
Really,
that.
I mean, she's perfect.
Maybe it's because I started Garrett Wilson last night. All right, let's talk about the Thursday Night Football recap. Jets and Patriots, my friends. Aaron Rodgers.
I'd say it was more Jets than Patriots.
Yeah, there were a lot of Patriots.
Was it Jets and Patriots? Or?
Yeah. I was so glad.
This is a Jets team I expected to see.
This
You
is
know,
what
they
you were
came out a
thinking?
little slow, a little rusty in Week 1 against your 49ers. Not a shocker on the road, but and then they were a little better against Tennessee, and then they're at home against a team they should have crushed in New England, and they got the job done. They looked substantially better on both sides of the football. I maintain that they remain a serious contender in the AFC.
Do you maintain that Garrett Wilson is the wide receiver 1 of this team, Mike, or do you think it's Alan Lazard at this point?
I mean, he's clearly the number 1. 9 more targets last night. He finally got into the end zone. There was a clear effort by Rodgers to get him the ball. Lazard, I mean, come on. He's a regression candidate, true and true all the way through. 5 targets a game. It's just not going to sustain. I know he has 3 touchdowns in 3 games, but 2 are garbage time. I'm sorry. It's just not going to keep up.
This is Mike hoping that plays
That's
out
right.
that way.
That's right. He's trying to
Because
speak it
the
into
text
existence.
chain last night was me saying, really? Alan Lazard leads the league in NFL receiving touchdowns right now?
5 targets a game. Who do you want to start that averages 5 targets a game?
Isn't that efficiency?
Alan Lazard.
Yeah, that's right. End of list.
Alan Lazard. We can talk about him more, and obviously it's a fun board bet from the preseason. I want to offer a slightly different take than on Garrett Wilson. If I have Garrett Wilson through 3 games, I'm actually a little bit disappointed. So there are 2 things that I think are worth noting here. Mike mentioned the 9 targets. That's a great number. You want 9 targets every single day of the week for a very, very talented player. Aaron Rodgers talked after the game about how through the first 3 weeks, every defense that they have faced has made it a priority to slow down Garrett Wilson. I can't imagine that will change going forward. But I'll just say this, and this is the eye test, and you guys may vehemently disagree. Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams had perhaps the best chemistry that I can recall between a quarterback and a wide receiver in a long, long time. Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson don't have anything close to that chemistry.
I agree. Yeah.
It's off.
I agree with that.
Just off. And so I understand that, like, Garrett Wilson is still a player that you feel really good about having in your lineup every single week, but a player who was going around the 10th overall pick in drafts this year does not feel to me at the same caliber as some of the wide receivers that went healthy also went around Garrett Wilson.
I agree with you, and yet he's still getting about 30% of the targets, and I
saying.
think that chemistry will improve as the year goes on.
I
So
hope
think
it does.
yeah.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I think there are reasons to believe it will get better. I would just say that through 3 weeks, even with 5 catches for 33 yards and a touchdown last night, I feel unsatisfied with Garrett Wilson so far.
That's fair. I think that's really fair to say.
I think it's fair. I also agree with Mike, and especially from what I saw through training camp and the way they were working together, I think this is something that they recognize that, and they're going to take it and work on it as well. I do think that it improves. I want to talk a little bit about Aaron Rodgers, and just obviously to the eye test, you saw that his mobility was pretty darn good for being a 40-year-old quarterback coming off the Achilles repair, but the confidence is there, taking sacks, getting pulled down from behind when he had to, making throws on the run. That was the biggest one to me. I think he was 5 of 5 for throws on the run. So Aaron Rodgers looking more Aaron Rodgers-like.
Let me ask you guys this question. Is this Jets backfield the Atlanta Falcons backfield from last year?
No.
Is this a little bit of a running back by committee with Braylon Allen?
No.
You don't think so?
No, Hall still played 70% of the snaps last night, and Allen looks good. He's a nice compliment, a nice number 2. But he's going to play 30% of the snaps. He's been under 10 fantasy points in 2 of the 3 games. He had the big 2-touchdown game last week.
Yeah.
I'm not really worried about this. I think this is probably good for Breece Hall that he doesn't have to have all the running on his back. He can be used. I want to say full-on Alvin Kamara, but like in the Kamara Eckler range where it's like maybe 200 carries and 50, 60, 70 targets, as opposed to having to do the whole thing like McCaffrey and handle a majority of the carries as well. So I think Hall's in a good spot here.
Yeah, if we were to redraft the first 3 games, and obviously only 2 teams have played their 3rd game, and just make it a first round of a fantasy draft and only included players that were going to like the top 15 or so.
Let's do that next week.
Breece Hall would be the first pick in the draft, I think, if you redrafted him right now. Like, because think about the various injuries and guys that either haven't been available or have had like down games, like Breece Hall making a case that he would reasonably go number 1 overall again. He has been so steady as a receiver, as Mike just alluded to, and once again found the end zone last night. I thought the Jets were going to give him a second opportunity for a touchdown. Instead, I thought Aaron Rodgers kind of made Garrett Wilson happy with that sick throw on that 1-yard touchdown catch. Could have easily gone to Breece Hall. It goes to Wilson, perhaps downplays what could have been a more prevalent narrative if the Jets hadn't gotten Garrett Wilson going more.
By the way, Breece Hall, one of them rare running backs where you're like, he got it. He has it. Like, he is just so good. That where he rolled over the defender and scored that touchdown. That guy's just on another level. He's so good.
Real quick on the Patriots, they looked like hot garbage, which is French, in case you guys didn't know.
I want to make sure that we talk about Ramondre more next week, because the sledding is about to get tougher for the Patriots, and it makes you worry that what we saw in the first 2 weeks was never going to be the reasonable expectation every week. But what last night is a little bit of a scary thought. I don't think it's going to happen every single week, but Ramondre would have been a reasonable sell high after week 2.
Not next week, but I think soon Drake May takes control.
Agree.
Pretty soon.
Ooh, I would love to see that. I mean, this offense can't get much worse than what it looked like last night. All right, when we come back, we're talking about a bunch of injuries you need to be aware of for week 3. Back here on Fantasy Focus, Daniel Dopp, Field Yates, Stephania Bell, and Mike Clay. Guys, here's the deal. We're going to just turn the microphone over to Stephania to let us know about a handful of injuries, but we're not going to be able to get to all of them. There are actually too many injuries for us to get to in this 60-minute show. Make sure you tune into Fantasy Football Now, like you usually do every single Sunday, but we have the most up-to-date information there. But for now, Stephania, give us what you got for the time that we got allotted here.
Oh, boy. Well, let's start with the Chargers and Justin Herbert, who got his right ankle trapped underneath the defender, had x-rays, which came back negative. Didn't practice on Wednesday, was limited on Thursday. We've seen Justin Herbert play through rib cartilage injuries, shoulder injuries, broken bones, and I think he's going to play through this as well. But that right ankle heavily taped, he's not going to be that mobile. The Steelers are certainly going to be coming after him. Could be a heavier run game as a result. Justin Herbert, I expect to play, but not move very well. So keep your eye on the practice reports for Friday for all of these. Obviously, we record this at 10 a.m., so things will evolve as the day goes on.
Of course.
Moving over to the Green Bay Packers, Jordan Love and Jaden Reed. I mean, Jordan Love, we know, escaped serious injury in week 1, dealing with the MCL injury and making a case for potentially starting this week, but it seems like the general feeling is that it's going to be another week before you see him. Jaden Reed with a calf injury, didn't practice on Wednesday, limited Thursday, but it sounds like he has a chance to go.
No Jordan Love means no Packers wide receivers. That's my stance going into week 3.
Agreed.
Even though I love Jaden Reed, especially because he's banged up as well, I don't feel comfortable starting him this week.
All right, well, there you go. If we go over to Cincinnati, T. Higgins with a hamstring injury. Remember coming out of camp, we thought everything was good to go, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. He had a hamstring issue during camp that he thought was good, and when he talked to Ben Baby right before it was announced that he was limited in practice, he had really thought that he was going to play week 1. So he was surprised that it was worse than even he expected. He has been making progress. If he practices in full on Friday, I think there's a good, strong case for them to play. They do have the advantage that they play Monday Night Football, so the team feels like that extra day gives them a shot to go. But it also means we may not know until later in the weekend.
Not starting him. Not counting on him this week.
Joe Mixon with the ankle injury, former Bengal, now Houston Texan. Last Sunday night, this was the one where it was questionable. Was this a hip drop swivel tackle that was not called? Joe Mixon expressing his displeasure. After that happened, he did not practice on Wednesday and Thursday. D'Amico Ryan said they are holding out hope that he becomes available, but I would not be surprised if it's a Cam Akers game.
Yeah, I was going to say, no Dameon Pierce as well. And amongst teams around the NFL, the Texans, I would say, are probably towards the bottom in terms of likelihood of a guy missing 2 days of practice and then playing. Seattle, you missed Wednesday, Thursday. Who gives? Who cares? Like, we might see you on Friday for a limited practice. You're full go on Sunday. This has always been a D'Amico Ryans thing, going back to his playing days. you practice to get ready to play on Sunday. Cam Akers, Mike, if those two guys are out, how high is he climbing?
Yeah, I think he really good offense, and we saw the workload that Joe Mixon has had so far. So we're talking back-end RB2. This is a guy that's super talented. Remember, he was a second-round pick. He's been fantasy relevant, but he's battled through the major knee injury, obviously. But he should be back now and kind of ready to go. And by all accounts, he looked good in the preseason and made that team, and he's ready to roll. So I like the situation. Should be a 15-plus touch game for him.
Yeah, Cam Akers might be the original poster child for what you can do coming off not only one Achilles repair, but two.
Yeah. Hey, and
really
if you're
impressive.
playing DFS this week, I'll bet his price is going to be super cheap. For him.
Oh, there you go. Well, here's another star player that ended up on the injury report, which is Justin Jefferson over at the Vikings with a quad contusion. Remember when he walked off the field, he looked like he had that stiff-legged walk, which if you ever had Charlie horse or you get hit with a deep bruise, you know what that feels like. But he was pretty positive even immediately after the game. A lot of people dismissing that as, oh, you don't believe the player. It's Justin Jefferson. I think he has a pretty good idea of what he's talking about, and he has been adamant that he is going to go ahead and play in this game. So I think Justin Jefferson may be a little bit sore still, but I don't really expect much drop-off in his performance, assuming that he goes.
We're
good.
No analysis
He's
needed
good.
there.
Right,
It's just
okay.
like Justin Jefferson says he's good, he's starting, he's active, we're starting.
You start him. That's right.
Yeah. How about A.J. Brown? A lot of people were surprised by that when the hamstring injury and then didn't play on Monday night. Obviously a short week for them. He told Lisa Salters on Monday night that he expected to be out a couple of weeks. So I don't think anybody's going to be surprised that we don't expect to see A.J. Brown this week. He said he is making progress. He is feeling better. But I would say I'm not planning on having A.J. Brown.
Okay. And if that happens, other than Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert, is there anyone else that you guys would look to in this passing game? Because those felt like the two that we trusted last
It's
week.
going to be a no for me, dog.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And Covey,
but,
you don't have any trust in Britton Covey? Come
Well,
on.
I mean, he had what,
Team
four more.
DFS?
He had like 4 more targets than John Dotson did, which
that's
Dotson
The
is out there
Jahan
a lot.
Dotson trade was actually like a big cost to pay as opposed to a nominal cost to pay.
Yeah, I mean, if they don't get him going, I mean, he could still be learning the playbook. He's been there a month, so it could be something to that. It could be schematic against Atlanta. But he did play. He was out there. He was the 2 in terms of snaps and routes. I mean, he was on the field. So.
How about throwing a few more balls Dallas Goedert's way?
Yeah, I'm fine
I
with
mean,
that.
I'd be okay with that.
Especially with
let's
the
bump
state
up
of the tight end
ends.
position right now.
He's
Yeah.
startable. He's a borderline tight end 2. I mean, or tight end 1. I know it was a slow start last week, but
He's not he's like not Tyler Conklin level good.
Oh, man.
Well, yeah, what Conklin went just last night went from like tight end 39 to tight end 7, just because that's how bad the position's been. You have one good game, you're just
6 for 93 last night. That's
Crazy.
it's a great game for a tight end this year.
Yeah.
I know you guys are just trying to help me prolong the agony of talking about my 49ers. But unfortunately, we're going to have to do that
The
here.
next 20 minutes.
We got Deebo Samuel, which you knew about already because the calf strain cropped up on the injury report early this week. Most people didn't notice it in the game, right? Because it was very late in the fourth quarter. He came off. He told the coaches he thought it happened. He came off, but he went back in. But it was so late that nobody really paid attention. The one thing I would say about Deebo, he's on the injury report a lot. He knows when he's hurt. And he'll be the guy who raises his hand and says, I'm not good enough to go. We've seen him miss 1-2 games this season with these type of injuries. And then when he's ready to go, he lets you know and he comes back. So he's pretty consistent that way. He didn't practice at all Wednesday or Thursday. It sounds from Kyle Shanahan like this is going to be a couple weeks. 49ers planning for that. So again, I don't think anyone's going to be surprised. We don't expect to see him. We are a bit surprised about the George Kittle thing, though. Comes up on the injury report with a hamstring injury. Here's why I'm concerned. He had an off-season procedure, core muscle procedure. So, sometimes a little muscle imbalance. Is that something that is the reason for this cropping up? He didn't practice on Thursday because he was sore after practicing on Wednesday. So pay close attention. I think he's going to come in as questionable. That's what the 49ers have indicated, which means potential game time decision on George Kittle.
We talked yesterday.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. You go.
I speak Adam Schefter. I translate Adam Schefter. I think almost religiously. I translate his tweets. And the way that he framed everything in that tweet yesterday, I would be floored if George Kittle plays.
Agreed.
Kind of felt like it based on the wording.
That was my interpretation. I mean, anything's possible, right? But like, if I have George Kittle, I'm making a contingency plan right now.
So we made a
Oh, I was just going to say this is going to be a really interesting matchup, right? Because you've got no Cooper Kupp and no Puka Nacua on the Rams side. You've got no Deebo. You've got Jordan Mason playing in place of Christian McCaffrey, which is that has proven to be just work out just fine. And then potentially no George Kittle. So one guy who I'm keeping my eye on is Juwan Jennings because he has been amazing and he's been a consistent player for them in this role for multiple seasons, which is part of why they wanted to make sure they had him solid.
Honestly, and then on the other side, between Robbie Chosen and Demir Bird.
Stop.
Which, by the way, if for a second you were like, wait, Robbie Chosen and Demir Bird are both on the 49ers or the Rams roster, it's not that outlandish right now given how things have shaken out so far.
On a serious note, watch for Chris Conley, old friend, former second-round pick. He's going to play a lot of snaps for the Niners in this game, and they're playing a Rams secondary that struggled. I mean, you're looking for a DFS deep sleeper.
We talked about Juwan Jennings yesterday a little bit. We have him as wide receiver 39 in our consensus rankings. If
I had him higher.
Kittle doesn't go, are you moving him up a little bit?
I already had him at wide receiver 31, so I feel pretty good about third and Juwan.
Got it.
No doubt
I'm
about it.
going him third and Juwan a touchdown on Sunday because I sure do.
Was that a dad joke?
I don't know. I was
I
just,
just-
Giving it a shot out there.
Don't like it at all.
We got so much more from Stephania. Remember, check out Fantasy Football now. When we come back, we're going to be talking quarterback trust meter for Week 3. Stick around. Back here on Fantasy Focus Football, Daniel Dopp, Field Yates, Stephania Bell, and Mike Clay.
When Mike doesn't laugh at one of my jokes, it actually makes me think it's a really good joke.
Yeah, because he doesn't really know comedy in the
Correct.
first place.
Yeah.
That's
Mike's idea of comedy is knock-knock jokes.
That's right. I'm the one that does the jokes on FF now.
Yeah,
so
we
I'm
know
just
how
saying,
that
there's a
goes.
reason for that.
Yeah, there is a reason for that. All right.
Heard
listen,
that, did you
Stephania,
guys see that numbers that Sunday NFL Countdown experiences a spike in ratings the minute Mike tells his dad joke?
Yeah, look, Stephania only laughs at the toilet jokes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got
it's like
potty
border-
About my
I-
speed.
I have to try. She's trying to get me canceled, right? She's trying to push the envelope till I go too far, and then I'm out the door.
You caught on.
And you'll be laughing. That's how I get you.
That's how that works.
I get
Yeah,
escorted
100%.
out of the.
Better believe I'll be laughing.
All right, talking about a handful of quarterbacks here. We got a big trust meter that we're going to go through. The trust meter either is nope, tush tester, everything's fine, set it and forget it, and yeehaw. I think it's actually pronounced yeehaw.
You got to say it like
That's a lot of choices.
Yeah, there's 5 different choices there.
that. This is like, you go to some of these restaurants that just have Cheesecake Factory, and they've got 97 different entrees.
Yes.
It takes you an hour and a half to order.
I was thinking the hot sauces. I think we know what you're picking now going forward. You're picking nope.
Yeehaw.
Nope.
Or is that the hot one? It's
Yeah,
so.
it's red, so I don't know. Whichever one is the opposite of that.
I told Mike, don't say the words hot sauce around me. And yet every single day,
I
he
can
tells
hear
me,
bring it
stomach
up.
rumbling across the studio.
yes, you can.
Between that arm swing and the hot sauces, Mike just keeps rubbing salt in that
I don't
wound.
like you.
Rubbing hot sauce in the wound.
Let's talk about a couple of these quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson, really tough week 2. After what was a very nice week 1, over 26 fantasy points in week 1, less than 10 fantasy points in week 2. We talked about him a little bit yesterday. I love the rushing yardage that he's got, but I would like to see more volume. Only 10 rush attempts, and the Bears have only given up 21 fantasy points to quarterbacks so far, 5th fewest at the quarterback spot. I have him as an everything's fine candidate, but I want to know where you guys are at on Anthony
I've
Richardson.
got him as set it and forget it. This is perhaps me just being too reliant upon my preseason confidence in Anthony Richardson. The Bears are a tough matchup. They've been really good against quarterbacks so far. C.J. Stroud last week, under 15 fantasy points. He's obviously an excellent player, and the Bears have only allowed 1 rushing touchdown to opposing quarterbacks since the start of last season. So they've done a good job neutralizing opposing rushing quarterbacks because they do have a very, very fast defense, and yet I can't quit Anthony Richardson, so I am the only person here amongst rankers that has him as a top 6 quarterback play. As a matter of fact, you two have him outside your top 10.
Yeah, I'm a little lower. I don't think he's an absolute must start, but I would still say everything's fine. If you drafted him as the 5th quarterback off the board, you're probably going to start him in this matchup, but it is tough. Like you said, Chicago's been good. He leads the NFL in interceptions, and he only has 10 carries this season. I actually have him projected for 8 in this game, so I expect him to run the ball a little bit more. That would be huge for him to sustain his fantasy value.
I mean, to me, he set it and forget it, right? He still ranks 8th among all quarterbacks in fantasy points. He's a top 10 quarterback. Who are you starting over him?
Well, I would give you 2
Alan
names.
Lazard.
I this week have both Baker Mayfield and Derek Carr that I would consider over him, given where we're at.
Fair?
So, but maybe
Crushing
you
it.
can call me
Derek
crazy.
Carr.
Maybe. Hey, have you not watched Derek Carr throw the football? We'll see. We'll get there. We'll talk about the
Anthony
Saints in a little bit.
Anthony, I appreciate the Bears' defense against the run from quarterbacks, but they have not hit the bulldozer that is Anthony Richardson.
Yeah,
So
that's fair. That's fair.
I'm with Field.
All right, Field, I'm going to lead this one off for you. We got Justin Fields up next. You and I are easily the 2 highest on Justin Fields this week. How are you approaching him?
Yeah,
Where's he at?
everything's fine with Justin Fields here because Justin Fields, if he gets 8 or 10 rushing opportunities, which I think is a pretty reasonable bet on Sunday, then he'll pay off as a mid to high tier quarterback too. Right? They're playing the Chargers on Sunday. I don't expect this to be a high-scoring game, but with Justin Fields, it's never about passing yard proficiency. It's
Correct.
always about the possibility of turning 10 carries into 55 yards and potentially a rushing touchdown, that would be good enough to get him to where I think he needs to be.
I'll go with Tush Tester because I think he'll need a tush push or two to get the rushing touchdowns and get him over the top. The Chargers have allowed the fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks. I'm not too worried about that. They play Carolina and the Gardner Minshew. I don't think that matters a lot yet, but he also hasn't been super productive with his legs. A lot of carries, but only 84 yards and 1 touchdown so far. He's 22nd at quarterback in fantasy points. I have him 20th this week, so probably not starting him.
I think it's fine.
I have him as a tush tester as well, for what it's worth.
Really?
Just because he is under 12 fantasy points
I'll
each
give
of the
you guys a
first 2
tush
weeks.
tester. It's called the Diablo hot sauce.
That's don't need it. Don't need it.
I'm so glad I missed that day.
You
That's all I
are
have to
very
say.
glad.
I've actually taken next year's day off when we do the hot takes. I'm off. I'm playing in a charity golf tournament.
Stephania,
Everything's fine.
Everything's fine. You're
Everything's
fine.
fine.
All right. I want to ask you about Dak Prescott.
Oh,
Taking on the
ask away.
Ravens this week. 11.5 fantasy points against the Browns. Only 12.9 in a blowout loss to the Saints as well. I would have expected with the Saints scoring so much that Dak would have been a little bit better in that game. How are you approaching him here in week 3? Where's he at?
I think it's bounce back week. I mean, Angry Dak is a great Dak. And by the way, since the start of last season, the Ravens have allowed the most pass yards in the NFL this season at 514. And you're facing a quarterback who has the 6th most pass attempts.
Yeah. Mike, are
You're
you
not going to run the ball against the Ravens. We
where's
know
he
that.
at on the list for you? Is he everything's fine? Is he set it and forget it? Is he a tush tester?
To me,
Yeah.
everything's fine.
Everything's fine with Dak?
Yep, I agree. I'd say everything's fine. Off to a bit of a slow start fantasy-wise. Hasn't really run the ball. I'd like to see a little bit more of that. But he's faced Cleveland and New Orleans, two teams we expect to be good defenses going forward this season, and that's been the start. I know Baltimore in general, certainly last year, was an elite defense. So I have him QB 11. It's not QB like 5 or so where he finished last year, but I would just continue to go forward with
I've got him as quarterback 13, so everything is fine. I actually thought he played really well, like in real football against the Browns. Not quite as well last Sunday, obviously, in that blowout loss to the Saints. But I have good news for you if you're a Dak manager out there and you're just trying to get by with one more week. Thursday Night Football, baby. The Giants play host to the Cowboys. Dak is going to match 6 days from right now.
Do you think Dak is going to have Jake Ferguson potentially out there this week, Stephania?
I think potentially, we had talked about him possibly being there in week 1 and then the team being a little more conservative coming off even though it was a mild MCL sprain with the bone bruise, they wanted to give it a little extra time. Sounds like there's a possibility.
Yeah, I would love it. It would help my chances on Dak if he was able to have his top 10. Although Luke Schoonmaker looked fine in week 2 for what it's worth. So, all right. What about Jaden Daniels?
Yeehaw!
I mean, that's
Oh my
You just
gosh.
wanted to say that.
You
Yes,
did.
I love it. All right, then Mike, you lead it off. Tell me why you're a yeehaw on Jaden
That's my
Daniels.
analysis. What's higher than set it and forget it? Yeehaw?
Yeehaw, yeah.
Yeah, you're locking him in. He's been awesome so far. QB 4, 132 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 26 carries. So the touchdowns and yardage are coming with the carries, unlike Justin Fields, who we just talked about. Also 410 passing yards. And here's the thing. He's QB 4. He hasn't even thrown his first NFL touchdown yet, so there's still something left to be had from Jaden Daniels. So I think if you drafted him as like QB 12 or 13 this year, you're feeling great right now about him going forward as your QB1.
I can't remember if does Bo Nix have. I don't think he does. The funniest stat from the first 2 weeks of the season was it was like most touchdowns thrown by first-round rookie quarterbacks, and people would always list it like J.J. McCarthy 1, Michael Penix Jr. 2, Drake May 3. The 3 guys who up until last night had not played a single snap combined, tied with Bo and Caleb and Jaden. Has been a slow start for the rookie quarterbacks in real life, but yeah, you feel good. I mean, it's always nice when a player pays off. With like exactly the expectations we had for said player coming into the season. Why can't every single player just be exactly like Jaden Daniels so far?
Yeah, when all is said and done, he might be the value pick of quarterback, like the best player you could have picked at that position this year.
If you're at a yeehaw on him and you're at QB 8 and I'm at QB 5, what is higher than yeehaw? Can I ask
You
that?
actually have to
Double
run around the
yeehaw.
studio.
I was going to
that what
say,
it is?
yeehaw where
No.
Daniel takes his
Daniel
shirt off.
might do that.
Yeah, you
so
gotta be
let's
careful.
not,
I was going to say,
let's
don't
not
invite
encourage
the
that.
idea of taking your shirt off here, Daniel, but yes, it's possible.
Well, just to put some rankings around what Mike said, just so that we know it. Most rush attempts. Tied for the most rush attempts at the quarterback spot with 26. Second most rushing yards.
Who do you think he's tied with? Lamar?
Yes. And I on pace currently, and I realize it's only 2 games, on pace for over 1,100 rushing yards after 2 games.
And he'll probably get there. Yeah.
How about
Hold
this?
take. I mean, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say for this week, you've got them facing the Bengals. Bengals not happy with how they've been performing. Bengals facing Washington plan to put up a lot of points. So what does that mean that Washington's going to have to do in return?
That's right.
Put up a ton of points. And so Jaden Daniels, I think this is a huge game for him. I'm on the yeehaw train.
Man, what it like seriously, like the coldest take ever was like everything was said about Jaden Daniels coming into the season is that like he'll get there as a passer. He's a very talented passer, but it may not be pretty right out of the gates. But he has perhaps as much rushing ability for a quarterback since any prospect since Lamar Jackson. And you just said
He is Lamar Jackson basically through 2 weeks.
in terms of rushing attempts, and he has yet to throw a passing touchdown. He has been a little bit all over the place as a thrower, as was Lamar early in his career. Lamar has since gone on to win 2 MVPs and having 1 year in which he led the NFL in passing touchdowns with 36.
Yeah, it's both a positive and a negative looking back to last week because the Commanders did score 7 times. It's just that they were all off of the leg of a kicker rather than getting in the end zone. But you love being able to see that that's what I expect. Like they're trying to get down in the red zone. They're getting to the spots where they're trying to be able to utilize what it is that he does well. So I'm still all in on
Yeah,
Jaden.
and oh, by the way, it's week 3. Let's remember that he is a rookie quarterback and has played 2 full NFL games.
What was the stat that the Giants were the second team ever to score 3 touchdowns and allow 0 and lose
Correct.
a game?
Yes.
That's like
Really?
the wild the Aaron Rodgers stat from last night.
This was wild. Yeah, share it.
Yeah, that was the first time he's ever thrown a touchdown to a
first
first round
rounder.
wide receiver.
How did Lazard not make it into the first?
Stop it. That's incredible. I did not realize. I guess I missed that.
And
stat
then
last
there was something
It
you have
wasn't
to
on
think
Rodgers.
about how many touchdowns. It was something like 408.
Yeah, 480 touchdowns. And his
480.
first ever
Yeah.
to a first round wide receiver.
If you look at players that were first round picks overall at every position, how many players at each quarterback, like superstar quarterbacks, have thrown touchdowns to? Like Tom Brady's like 20, like Peyton, they're all like in that range, and Rodgers is 2. It's Garrett Wilson now, and it was Mercedes Lewis. Is
Big
the other
dog.
one. Yeah. It's
Big
just
Dog's still
2.
getting it done, by the way. I love the big dog.
Let me ask you this question. We don't have this quarterback on the list, but I do want to throw it out there. Baker Mayfield. I mean, he's been so good through the first 2 weeks, taking on the Denver Broncos. How do you feel about Baker heading into
I feel
week
like
3?
Yeehaw fits Baker. Like he is a
That is
yeehaw kind of,
persona,
right? Is
right?
that his
Yeah.
personality or what?
Yeah, he definitely has some swagger to him. I'm really happy to see Baker thriving, by the way. Like, he was great earlier this week talking about some young quarterbacks that are
Yes.
going through tough times, specifically Bryce Young. And just a really good story in why patience really should matter a whole lot more than it does. I don't know how many NFL owners watch this show, but man alive, it's on you. You are the people that make decisions on how fast you fire head coaches and GMs. The more patient you are, the less likely these kids are to get yanked 2 games into their second season. So NFL owners, you bear a lot of the responsibility for the quarterback struggles that are taking place right now. I firmly believe that.
He's got a lot of perspective to be able to share with some of these guys
Yes.
going through ups and downs, and I love being able to see him come out on the other side of that one. All right, we got more of our Week 3 preview coming up next. Back here on Fantasy Focus Football, Daniel Dopp, Field Yates, Stephania Bell getting her cell phone,
That's
and Mike Clay. No big deal. No big deal. Let's talk about some fire up or fade 'em players, guys, that we're trying to decide. Are you firing up for your starting lineup, or are you going to fade them this week? Because you're not really sure if the first 2 weeks are real or not.
Let's do it.
Not sure it's going to be a better person to start with than J.K. Dobbins. Running back 19, over 130 rushing yards each of his first 2 weeks. Leads the NFL in rushing yards. I said earlier this week, hey, man, you guys were saying maybe pump the brakes on J.K. Dobbins. I said, why not throw out a trade request, see if maybe you can get an injured star for him. I got a tweet yesterday. Thank you for that, Daniel Dopp. I sent out a trade request. J.K. Dobbins for CMC, bam, accepted. I now has Bijan Robinson and CMC, and because J.K. Dobbins was drafted so late, he was the number 3 running back in his squad anyway, so we'll see how things work out. I'm still in. I just want to say this, though, on J.K. Dobbins. I have him as running back 19. I'm firing him up.
Yeah, I would say this. This is like one of those where there are some warning signs, right? This is by far the best defense that they have played. He has not been a factor in the passing game. He is not going to rush for 9.9 yards per carry every single week for the rest of this
Yeah, but he's
season.
not 2.9 yards per carry like
Are
Gus
you
Edwards.
really going to bench? Let's put the human hat on here for a second. Is a human who has J.K. Dobbins really going to bench him? That would be my question. And I think the answer is most likely not. I'm going with fire him up as well.
Yeah, same. I think, you're riding the hot hand, which is what Harbaugh said he would do all along. He kind of opened the door for J.K. Dobbins to make this play. And I think that, especially with Justin Herbert being compromised, this is going to be a heavy run game.
Yeah, I agree with what you just said, which is how do you bench him? Averaging almost 10 yards a carry the way he has started this season. I mentioned the stats. Stephania wasn't here the other day, but 2 carries inside the 30-yard line so far. That's it. I mean, he just does not have great opportunities to score so far. And I know he has 2 touchdowns, but they were big plays, and that's not really going to be sustainable going forward, not to mention 4 yards on 4 targets. But here's the thing. When you play really well and coming off all those major injuries, it could be a little bit of a ramp-up. So maybe they start to get him a larger share of the carries. He's been out-carried by Gus Edwards in both games. Maybe they get him more work in the passing game. Maybe he gets more goal line work going forward. So that gives you some reason for optimism, but what we've seen so far gives you reason for pause, not to mention a much tougher schedule going forward. So he's a tough one. I agree with you. I'd be exploring the trade market, but I think you start him this week.
I don't know how you don't, like you guys said, especially given where we're at. Once you get past like running back 15, it feels tough to say, boy, that guy I definitively would start over the guy that's currently leading the NFL in rushing yards, which makes it tough. How about on that same team, Quentin Johnston? I mean, Quentin Johnston is a tough one. Only 11 targets, Mike Clay. I mean, is there a chance after what felt like a nice bounce back in week 2, you would consider him here in week 3 with a banged up Justin Herbert?
Yeah, this is a wild one. Struggled as a rookie, and then in the preseason, it was like he's clearly 4th on the depth chart. Like, it's just not happening, and we're all like, all right, it's just not. He's going to be a bust. And then now he's leading their wide receiver room in targets, catches, yards, touchdowns. He's a 24% target share. By all accounts, he's their number 1 wide receiver right now. I know Josh Palmer's been a little beat up, but he's still not fully healthy. So I have Johnson at 42. I'm not all in yet. I mean, he has a grand total of 11 targets so far in what's been a super run-heavy offense. So I think he's a flex option, a guy you scoop up off waivers, and you just kind of monitor for now and see if he's the real deal or not.
Yeah, I have very tepid expectations this week against an awesome Steelers defense. Justin Herbert being banged up at best going into this game. So I'd like to find a different option other than Quentin.
I've got him as a fade as well. Steelers 8th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers, to your point, Field.
Agreed.
All right, what about Tank Dell?
Honestly,
Tank Dell is so difficult.
Yeah, this is the one where this is the one where I fear that no matter what I do, it'll be the wrong decision.
Yes.
That's how I feel about Tank Dell.
Yes.
But if I go back to the well one more time and say, yeah, he had 7 targets in week 1, and he's Tank Dell. He was wide receiver 8 when he got hurt last season. He's got C.J. Stroud throwing him the football. You should keep playing him. And yet last week, I very much regret playing Tank Dell in a league in which I had other reasonable options to consider. So I've got him as wide receiver 32. This is one where it really depends on what your roster looks like. But man, there are some steadier options than Tank Dell right now.
Yeah, I'm more optimistic. I'm still starting him. I'm sticking with Tank Dell. Do you know he's only 1 behind Stephon Diggs in targets, and has same number? Yeah. He's top 25 in routes among receivers, and he also has more than double the air yards of Stephon Diggs. He is getting opportunities for splash plays, and when the first one hits for a 50-yard touchdown like last year, it's going to be all is forgiven going forward. Also,
for receiving yards to air yard, just for the record.
Wow.
Just me. I prefer receiving yards.
How do you get big receiving yard totals? So you get them with air yards.
How do you get positive yard totals? Because Tank Dell didn't have that last week.
Yeah,
That's all I'm asking for.
Right.
I'm asking for positive yards.
I'm saying the usage suggests that going forward things will be more positive. So I feel good. And also, 5 carries too. They're finding ways to get the ball in his hands. That's extra points as well. So I maintain my positivity with Tank Dell. And if someone's panicking and trading him, I would go for it.
I maintain that you might have a better option on your roster, which is why he's outside my top 30, just barely. But I do think there are plausible options you could have as your 4th wide receiver or your 3rd wide receiver to put into your flex over Tank.
That might be. I mean, I'm at 32, so it's not like we're way off. But I still view him as a fringe wide receiver 3 flex. I'm probably starting him.
Yeah, I'm at 29.
You love Tank Dell.
Yeah, why do you guys not love Tank Dell? I mean, everything that Mike said is what I have here down on my page too. 13.2 air yards per target. Stephon Diggs is the safety valve. 5.3 air yards per target. So he's much more Nico Collins than he is Stephon Diggs in this offense. And the idea that it just takes 1 or 2 big plays, and because we saw that last year, it feels hard for me, like kind of what you said, it's the human side of me, Field, where it's like the week that I decide to bench him is the week that the Tank Dell that we've been expecting to see is going to show up. So
Correct. That's how it works. It's called the Murphy's Law of fantasy football.
Yeah, can we call it something else? Can we call it the Mike Clay Law of fantasy football?
Yeah,
Because it's a
whatever you
negative
wanna call it.
connotation, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't fit me. We need a better one than that. You can do it
the
like
Lazard
the opposite. I
Law
want
of
the
fantasy
opposite.
football.
There you go.
I want when the guy's going to go be worse. That's the one I want to be named after.
I still have him as a fire him up, but he's kind of go back to the other segment we just did. He's like a tush tester.
I think that's exactly what he is. But to be fair, this is kind of what we thought before the season started, right? We knew that he was going to lose opportunities to Stephon Diggs with that addition. So many people who can catch the ball. You figured you were going to have great weeks out of Tank Dell and then not so great weeks. And so far, that's basically where we're landing.
All right, Stephania, let's talk about your quarterback then, Brock Purdy. I mean, this guy leads the league in the end.
I have a little special thing to say about Brock Purdy later, but fire him up.
Even
We're all
without
fired
Debo
up,
and George
right?
Kittle. Yeah. I mean, I haven't
NFL in passing yards, and the Rams are absolute booty cheeks on defense.
I mean, there's really not. It's,
Hashtag analysis.
That's it.
That's my stance on Brock.
More to come on the 49ers
enough,
a
yeah.
little later, but I'm with you. I think it is tricky. You losing 3 of the big 4, but
well,
you're starting them.
I think it's hard because people, it's the unsexy pick, right? It's just, he's just running the offense. It's not the flash of what can he bring you with his legs. You don't expect him to run the ball, but the consistency is there. And as Field said, a banged up Rams depleted defense.
Actually,
as well.
I said they were a booty cheeks defense.
Yeah, well,
You called them banged up. I'll stand by my stance.
Mike, I want to throw this one at you. If we're all starting Brock Purdy, feel comfortable with him. If you didn't like Alan Lazard, who's getting 5 targets a game, how do you feel about a guy getting 4 targets a game and Rashid Shaheed? Is he 59, wide receiver 59 in targets? But I do want to say this. Eagles have been beat deep. Jaden Reed beat him deep in week 1. We saw the same thing in week 2 with Darnell Mooney. Do you think the same thing could potentially happen? So we're rolling with him here this week?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Only 4 targets in both games, but they didn't have to throw the ball very much. His target share is 21%, which would easily be a career high for him. That is a good number. And if they have to throw the ball a normal amount, not even a lot, a normal amount, that's going to move up to 6 or 7 targets, and that's going to be huge for the role that he plays. And he's been super effective, over 70 yards and a touchdown in both games. And also, again, manufacturing touches, 3 carries across 2 games. So, Philadelphia Eagles defense is not where they want it to be just yet. They're developing some young talent. It's taken a while. They've had some injuries there with Isaiah Rodgers, so an opportunity for Shaheed to hit for a big play in this game.
He's like Tank Dell, but he gets the yards, not the air yards.
Oh, Field. Didn't like that. I didn't like that.
I'm just saying, no, here's what I'm saying. But, this is a good example, Rashid Shaheed is, of a player that if you have him on your roster and you also have Tank Dell, great, serviceable replacement for Tank Dell that I would feel more confident in going into week 3. I love
agree.
Tank Dell as a player, guys. It's just there's one football to go around. There's only so many catches and opportunities available.
Much more concentrated target share, obviously, in that Saints offense than what we see with the Texans. All right, Stephania, how about Xavier Worthy? I mean, this kid, wide receiver 32 is where I've got him ranked. Falcons 9th fewest fantasy
We're doing him right
points
now?
to
I
wide
know. Are we on our worrisome?
I'm
wide
sorry, I
receiver?
pulled Xavier Worthy out already. Sorry, that was the next one.
Charbonnet,
My
Stephania.
fault.
Yeah.
My
How
fault.
about a Ken Walker update, Stephania?
Yeah, Ken Walker with the oblique injury. This is yet another abdominal injury for Ken Walker, which you don't love to see. Has not practiced. I think there's some concern about his availability up in Seattle. Could be another Zach Charbonnet day.
Hearing some whispers, it might be more than just this week on Kenneth Walker III. We'll see.
And here's the thing. The pattern of the repeated abdominal injuries is the overarching concern for me. It's a little bit unusual.
Wasn't super efficient, but he had a lot of volume left.
Yeah, how about 95% of the snaps for Zach Charbonnet last week? That's a lineup block when a guy plays that much volume. 14 carries, 5 targets, almost 20 touches, 69 yards, a touchdown. And he also scored a touchdown in week 1 as well with a healthy Ken Walker. Miami, by the way, struggled against running backs. 4 touchdowns, already 6 most fantasy points. That's against Jacksonville and Buffalo. So Charbonnet set up for another big week. He's a good RB2.
Yeah.
On some Chardonnay and start yourself some Charbonnet.
That's right. I do have a fantasy team named Sipping Charbonnet.
Nothing wrong
guys
with
are
that.
really good
Do you have Zach Charbonnet on that team?
I do, in fact.
Are you allowed
It
to?
should
think
be
I do.
like a
I'm not-
legal thing. Like
Right.
you have to have Zach Charbonnet on that team.
Yes.
I need
Otherwise,
I need a Savi B.
Yeah.
Savi B. Bowers or something. So
Yeah.
I gotta
Oh,
work.
wow.
Yeah, you
I-
can't force the comedy.
Buck.
Mike.
Why don't you stick to projections over there, okay?
Some Savi B names.
All right, let's talk about a Week 3 fantasy bonanza taking place down in Scottsdale, Arizona. Detroit Lions
That'd be so much fun.
taking on the Arizona Cardinals. This game is just loaded with lineup blocks. Like, I mean, just across the board.
So many.
How many guys are you starting in this one? It feels like
Almost
everyone.
all of them. Kyler,
Marvin Harrison Jr.,
Gibbs, James Conner, Marvin Harrison Jr., Amon-Ra, Jamison Williams, Trey McBride, Sam Laporta.
Oh my gosh.
It's almost all of them.
That's so many. All right, let's start off with something that we didn't mention then.
Okay, go for it.
Because if we're going to start with all those names, I do want to ask you, does that mean that if we're going to start all the Lions pass catchers, that Jared Goff is at least worth an option inside the top 10 or 12 this week?
No, because that's been consistent. Like, we have been starting, at least last week, we were starting all of the Lions pass catchers, maybe including Jamison Williams, and it did not pay off at all for Jared Goff.
That's true.
I remind people of this all the time because it's a question that is fundamentally asked. If all the guys around the quarterback are started in fantasy, shouldn't the quarterback be startable in fantasy? It's not always the case. The Lions are a good example of that. So I am not starting Jared Goff. I've got him outside my top 15 for quarterbacks this week.
Okay.
Me too. He's 26 so far. It's been a struggle to start the season. And Arizona did a good job against Matthew Stafford. I know he was dealing with a lot of injuries, but they got lit up by Josh Allen. But welcome to the club. Everyone does.
Yeah, everyone does.
I think let's keep it real here on this game for a second. So I think the players that are generating like legitimate questions coming into this game, David Montgomery, I get is like the classic like flex question, like Montgomery or who. All of us have David Montgomery between RB22 and RB26. He's going to see probably close to a dozen carries, maybe an opportunity in the passing game, but that is definitely not part of the normal David Montgomery workload. And if they have a chance at the goal line, he's a pretty darn good bet to get an opportunity near the goal line as well. He will almost always slot in around running back 20 to 25. So evaluate your options relative to that. But the players that people are asking about, there's one specifically in this game. It's Sam Laporta. And I get it. There are so many tight ends that have struggled. But what will it take for Sam Laporta to get on track? And Travis Kelce managers sharing this frustration to a degree, Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram, you name it. But this is a Sam Laporta day. If Sam Laporta struggles once again, the narrative is going to turn, not on the player, but just like, why on earth did I make this guy the first tight end drafted in my league this year?
I think he's going to get going.
I think
considered
so too.
him
I'm just
for
saying
my,
that,
I considered him maybe a start of the week here. I think he gets going. I mean, week 1 was the Jamison Williams game. Week 2 was the
sound like Ben
Amon-Ra
Johnson
St.
right
Brown game.
That's what he said yesterday.
What?
He was talking about sort of like how every week there's kind of a guy that has like a quieter week, right? Ben
Johnson, the OC.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah.
I have him starting as well. I have him as my tight end 1 for the week. I think all of us probably do.
And there's signals here. Leads all tight ends in pass routes. I mean, he's out there. He's still – it's not like Cole Kmet where it's like a reduced role this year because of new personnel. He is still full on a major part of this offense. I'm not worried. Honestly, very little to no worry about Sam Laporta.
So you're not worried about whether he should be started or not. I'm worried about whether or not I need to be frustrated when I go to bed on Sunday. Okay, and that I think that's where managers go, right? Is like 3 straight weeks of not producing would be incredibly frustrating for the person that made Sam Laporta the first or second tight end off the board. We're all starting him, but we are also really hoping that week 3 looks like the player that we thought about all offseason.
Yeah, we can't have another week 2 where Jared Goff throws the ball over 50 times and you only get 3 targets for the number 1 tight end.
Help David Montgomery to stop scoring touchdowns, okay? That helps nobody.
I honestly feel like this is going to go back to they got away from running the football. I think that was a part of why they lost the game actually last week. I think that they're going to see a lot more David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs in this one because I don't think they want Jared Goff to throw the ball 55 times.
No way.
I like it, though.
I mean, for Jamison Williams and Amon-Ra and hopefully Sam Laporta, I'm there with you.
19 targets every week.
Jamison, by the way, absolutely a lineup block right now.
He's
full-time player, targets are there, explosive plays, talent, you got it all.
All right, and then you just mentioned the other side of it. We don't even need to talk about him. You're starting Kyler Murray, you're starting James Conner, you're starting Marvin Harrison Jr., and you're starting Trey McBride.
This is a nice, cookie-cutter, clean
Very
Arizona
simple.
Cardinals offense.
We like that.
Love
I like it when all the balls go to the same people.
That's good.
All right, when we come back, we're going to be talking about worrisome wide receivers. That's when we're talking Xavier Worthy right after this. Back here on Fantasy Focused Football, Daniel Dopp, Field Yates, Stephania Bell, and Mike Clay. All right, let's talk about some wide receivers that may have us worried heading into week 3.
Or not.
Or maybe not have us worried. That's the question mark. Are you worried or are you not worried? Field, Xavier Worthy, the one I'm going to start with. Falcons, 9th fewest fantasy points, only 7 targets through the first 2 weeks. This is a Chiefs team that just needs to be able to figure something out in the passing game. Are you worried about him here in week 3?
Yeah, that number is notable to me, but it's also notable that they played the Steelers in week 1, in the game in which the Steelers just grinded it out. So they did not throw the football a ton. I'm worried about Xavier Worthy because he needs to score a touchdown to pay off. On the other hand, he's Xavier Worthy playing with the Chiefs offense. He could score a touchdown literally if he has just 1 touch on Sunday night. I've got him as wide receiver 33. That's where I net out.
Yes, 68% route participation so far. For perspective, Rashee Rice is at 74%. So he is still a major part of this offense. I know the targets haven't been there yet, but Marquise Brown is not coming back this regular season. Worthy's role is only going to expand going forward. I feel very, very confident in him in this high-powered offense, and we talked about this. We think they're going to throw the ball more now without Isaiah Pacheco. So he's 31 for me. I think he should be locked into lineups.
I was going to say, I don't feel like I've seen the Patrick Mahomes that we've become accustomed to so far this season. And one way to get your quarterback back on track is to have a couple explosive plays with Xavier Worthy. We thought that was going to be his identity for the Chiefs coming into this season. And then it hasn't really been the case, especially in the last week. Only 4.2 fantasy points last week. I think he helps Patrick Mahomes get right. And this is a bigger week for Xavier
I
Worthy.
think he's worthy of a start.
Oh, okay.
So you
Nailed
spoke
it.
about him pretty confidently, and I still feel like wide receiver 30 is more of a conversation.
Yeah.
What I would say is that like the confidence you spoke to me sounded like a top 20 play. The number that you put to it felt like it was a wide receiver 30.
I was
okay.
I was
Getting
actually
called
going to
out.
ask, like, would you rather start Xavier Worthy and what he could be in this offense? As I think the number 3 pass catcher behind Rashee Rice, who is the only thing that's working right now for that team, and what should be Travis Kelce being able to pick it back up. Would you rather start Xavier Worthy or Tank Dell?
I feel better about Xavier Worthy right now.
I think the ceiling is higher on Worthy.
The
ceiling is super high on both.
I think it's a close call. I mean, I think you're probably right. I think sometimes I have a guy 31. I'm like probably going to be in a flex in all leagues. I mean, in
Wide receiver
10-team
3
leagues
with
though, where you only
upside.
start 2 receivers, maybe not as strong of a take. But I just think. I guess my point is I'm not overreacting to last week. You know, it was very much a dud. I don't think really anything changes. He's still a huge part of this offense. I feel really good about him moving forward. If he's on my roster, I feel good. I feel like I'm in a good spot.
Not worried about Rashee Rice and not worried about Travis Kelce yet, in spite of all the things that we've seen. We expect him to eventually get.
I'm not worried about whether I'm starting Travis Kelce in the same way that I'm not worried about whether you're starting Sam Laporta. I'm worried about whether I'm going to be sad on Sunday night if Travis Kelce
That's
at
fair.
11:20 has 3 catches for 18 yards in this game on national television.
I guess I'm not worried because I didn't draft him anywhere because I told you guys I wasn't going to, so I don't have to worry about that, which
go.
is nice.
Look, there are those guys like you made the air yards joke, and there is some truth to that. Sometimes, most of the time, guys will turn the corner, and those yards will be realized, and they'll have a big. Other times it just happens all season. You're like, okay, is this guy ever going to score a touchdown? Like,
Wasn't that
feel like
Courtney in the first year with Russell Wilson?
yeah, it's like,
like
or
he
it's
just
like
kept
Christian
crushing
Watson, like unrealized end zone targets. Like there's always guys that just it sustains, and a couple of them do it, and they just never. Kyle Pitts just won't score touchdowns, or whoever it is. Deontay Johnson just won't. It's like eventually he's going to score, right? He never did. It's like 5% of the time, but it happens.
Let's talk. Go ahead, Stephania.
I was just going to say, I think Travis Kelce, too, we ignored the things that have been called back with penalties. Like, he had he had one big play that was called back because of a holding call. Like, there is more production on Travis Kelce than what is showing on the scoreboard. So it's not like Patrick Mahomes is ignoring him, and this is going to work itself out.
He won't be wide receiver.
What was it?
End 28
End
all season long. Maybe he'll be tight end
28.
17 or something like that,
Wow.
but not 28. Let's talk about Mike Evans. Mike
Do it.
played
Oh, here
2
we go.
touchdowns in week 1, a dud in week 2. Now this week, I believe after reading the wide receiver cornerback shadow report that you put out every week, one of the best things that I'm able to read, he's going to get this Pat Surtain shadow. So how much are you docking him in your rankings because of that?
Yeah, so they haven't had to throw a lot. He actually only has 11 targets so far this season, which is a low number, but the target share is 23%, which is about where he was last season. So if they have to throw the ball more, that will help him going forward. Ideally, they're ahead in this one and don't have to throw it against a Denver team that has struggled so far. But you nailed it. Denver has allowed the fewest fantasy points to wide receivers this season. They play a ton of man, and that means Pat Surtain is going to be lined up and shadowing Mike Evans on basically every play in this game so far this season. Surtain has shadowed DK Metcalf and George Pickens on 100% of their perimeter routes, which is where Evans is most of the time. 3 catches, 29 yards for Metcalf. 2 for 29 for George Pickens. He's the best corner in the league probably right now, and this is going to be Evans' biggest challenge of the entire season comes this week.
Wow. You're still starting him, though, this
I don't know how. That's the thing. It's Mike Evans. Like, how do you bench this guy? But you definitely move him down the ranks. Not far enough to bench him, but high bench bust potential here.
That sucks. I mean, it feels like this isn't going to be another Chris Godwin week, potentially, with where things are at.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're stacked at receiver, maybe. I mean, if you went 0 running back and you're loaded in a league where you only start 2, maybe you bench him. But
I wouldn't feel
he's
good.
just one of them guys that's so hard to bench.
Mike did this. He absolutely nailed it with his preseason. Guess the week to Monday morning headline. It was Blake Corum, the most dropped player. Week 4, Monday morning headline could be Bucks improved to 3-0. Bucky Irving leads team in rushing.
Ooh.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
If they lean on him, I think he's a better runner than
Somebody,
than Rashad White.
I just got a dynasty trade offer that would send Rashad White to me, and I'm like, I can't do it right now. I'm nervous. I'm nervous about him moving to a committee or just not being the guy there long term. I hope he is, but he's
more nervous about him in the preseason.
Yeah.
Doesn't feel good. Doesn't feel good. All right, let's talk about another handful.
He also is on that worst team ever. He's
on your
just
team?
as
Okay, all right,
fine.
that helps. That helps to know. A couple more worrisome wide receivers heading into this one. Basically all of the Bears. I mean,
Correct.
where are we at, Stephania, on Keenan Allen before we talk about this wide
Still
receiver?
not practicing unless something changes today on Friday. He really has not been visible since he sat out last week when they played against the Texans. With this heel injury, was referred to as plantar fasciitis on the broadcast last week. I mean, it could be both. There's not a lot of information about it. When the player's not around, that's the other thing. People know you want to follow up with the player when they're injured and they're not practicing. Hard to do that. But right now, I would say there's certainly some concern that he's not out there.
Well, you had mentioned this yesterday. The idea of Keenan Allen coming back might actually be a good thing for the rest of these wide receivers, too, and not just for them, but for Caleb Williams. When I look at DJ Moore, if there's no Keenan Allen, it's a tighter target tree, right? He's 6th in the NFL in targets. He leads all wide receivers in plays resulting in negative body language. That's a Daniel Dopp special stat, though. That one.
I wrote that one late at night last night.
He owned up to that one.
That's right.
He apologized. He's a total pro, and he understands how much responsibility there is being the number one wide receiver with a young quarterback who every single cut is probably coming his way after a bad pass. I feel fine about DJ Moore because while he has not yet found the end zone, he's been fine. Like, he hasn't been terrible. Like, back-to-back games with at least 5 catches. You'll take that, right, from DJ Moore?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he drew L'Jarius Sneed a lot in week 1. He drew Derek Stingley shadow in week 2. This week, if Keenan Allen is going to miss a game, it's be a good one because the best part of the Colts defense, arguably, with Buckner out, is slot corner, where Kenny Moore aligns that he would be on Keenan Allen. They struggle on the perimeter. They have major questions on the outside. They've struggled so far there this season. That sets up beautifully for DJ Moore. This will be his easiest matchup of the season, as well as Rome Odunze. So if you're looking for a Rome breakout game, and by the way, he had a pretty good connection with Caleb during training camp and in them preseason games. Remember the game where they were really struggling, and then that game against Cincinnati that got the offense going was like a 50-yard pass to Odunze. I think he actually drew a PI and then caught a long pass. So reason for optimism with both of those guys this week.
A lot of reason for optimism for DeAndre Swift as well. If ever there was a time for him to get it going, this would be it. I mentioned this earlier on in the week, but the Colts have allowed the most rushing yards in the first 2 games of a season for any team since the 1978 Indianapolis Colts.
Oof. Seems bad. And that was with DeForest Buckner out there for a lot of that.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Back in 1978, they couldn't play with 2 high safeties.
Stop it.
I love Mel.
True. I love Mel Kiper.
Mel is my favorite.
I could
Feels
watch
being
that
a
rant once a
troublemaker.
day for like the next 2 weeks and still not get enough of it.
I just want to spend one day inside that brain. I love that man.
It'd be so good. You have to get past the hair first.
And by the way, you can't ban it, but that would be so fun if they could ban it because,
Right?
oh my God, the passing would
So
be
the
back.
Do you
scrambling.
have a rule that you would ban if you could right now in football?
Yeah, the kickoff rule. Like, I want to make it come out to the 35 or 40 if you're going to do a touchback. It feels
It's not good enough.
Yeah.
22% were returned last year. It's 30% this year. That's not enough. That's not fixing the kickoff. We still come back from break. They kick the ball through the end zone. Another break. Wait for it's a waste of time.
I agree.
Fix it.
You know what? I have a quirky rule that I think came into play last night that I would like. If a team kicks a field goal at the end of the half, but there's still a few seconds left, the soon-to-be receiving team should have the right to say, let's not even line up for those 7 seconds. We'll just take it into halftime.
Yeah.
Because instead we go through this exercise where they kick the ball off, you field a fair catch, you go and they take you to commercial break, they take one knee. Like, after that field goal with 7 seconds left, just go to halftime.
Yeah, I would say that. And then, of course, the infamous one, which is the fumble through the end zone.
Oh, that's too. Everybody likes that rule.
No.
You got one or no?
I don't have one. I don't think so. I would love to see them be able to I'm going to save it.
All right.
Okay.
I don't have it well formulated enough, but it has to do with roster management. So it's not as fun as your guys, but mine has to do because I'm always dealing with injuries in terms of how I would love them to be able to staff a team on a Sunday.
There's also the rule that we were discussing before the show where the Vikings have to trade Justin Jefferson for the 49ers, right? Is that still?
that one would last.
I would like
Still on
that.
the table?
I would like that. I mean, fair enough. They gave him Sam Darnold, so
Right.
I
Just
think it's only
be-
right.
Yeah, one for one. That seems reasonable.
I got
It
one
works
more.
with the cap.
One more worrisome wide receiver I want to throw out there to you guys. If you've got Jalen Waddle on your roster, how are you approaching him with Skylar Thompson under center, Mike? Is he a flex play based on where he's at? Or are you trying to find other players that you would play in place of him?
Yep, he's on the flex radar, but certainly not a lineup lock anymore. I talked about this the other day. If you look at his stats with and without Tua 2 years ago, when Tua missed basically 5 games, the better part of 5 games, his usage was cut in half, and he had 0 touchdowns. So I'm definitely worried about Waddle in this situation.
Don't worry about where you have him in the rankings. I don't want to hold you to this, where the rankings specifically are right now. Waddle or Tank Dell?
Tank Dell.
Waddle or Xavier Worthy?
Worthy.
Waddle or Rashid Shaheed?
Shaheed for
Ooh,
sure.
Shaheed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Waddle, or was there somebody else we just talked about in that same range of 31, 32?
Okay,
so
Keenan
people-
Allen played. No, I would play him over Odunze.
Waddle or Demarcus Robinson?
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a close
good
one.
Waddle. Okay, I'm just putting
I
some
would think
perspective
I would
on
go
it.
Waddle there. That's a close call, though.
Yeah, that doesn't feel good when Jalen Waddle is being compared to Demarcus Robinson right now. Don't love that.
Wide receivers deep, and he's in a tough spot right now.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about our starts of the week heading into week 3. Stick around. Back here on Fantasy Focus Football, Daniel Dopp, Field Yates, Stephania Bell, and Mike Clay. Start of the week time, guys. My first 2 starts of the week for what it's worth was Jaden Reed and J.K. Dobbins. So I think you got some catching up
Yeah,
to
I was
do.
going to say, give us 4. Just you go.
This is where I got lucky the first. No, maybe not lucky,
no,
but
you
I
did not get
I did
lucky.
well the
Self
first 2
credit.
weeks.
Oh, gray unlucky. Oh, no.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay, Mike Clay. All right. Well, we're going to start with you then for that comment. If you got a start of the week this week, where are you going?
Okay, so we've seen this from Kyle Shanahan before, right? We've seen situations where he's down on some talent, guys are hurt, and what does he do in those situations? He builds an entire game plan around who's left.
Yep.
And that means Brandon Ayuk might get 18 targets in this game, and that might not be an exaggeration against this Rams secondary. He is set up wonderfully. And by the way, I have him wide receiver 7 with George Kittle and a 20% target share still projected. I mean, this Ayuk might lead every wide receiver in targets and fantasy points this week. He's in such a good spot. Last year when Deebo Samuel was out for 2 games, Brandon Ayuk had a 30% target share, which just reinforces my point of a featured player. And of course, the Rams have struggled. They faced the 6th fewest wide receiver targets so far, but they have allowed the worst yards per target, the 11th most fantasy points. Jamison and Harrison both had huge games against them. Ayuk plays a similar role in the perimeter. I mean, if he has a bad game here, I don't know what to say. I mean, he's set up perfectly for a huge 15-plus target performance.
I came in too early on Brandon Ayuk last week,
Just
and it
one
did
week.
not pan out. But now there's all this extra supporting information that would lead you to believe that this is the breakout week for Brandon Ayuk. Plus, he's got his sea legs underneath him now a little bit more, having 2 weeks back and playing football.
Well, if Brandon Ayuk is going to do well, Stephania, you think his quarterback is maybe going to help him?
Well, we did hint at that earlier, didn't we? Top 10 play this week in Brock Purdy, and look, he's 8-0 against the NFC West.
Yeah.
So how about that? And the Rams, obviously, as we've said, completely depleted. Brock Purdy first in passing yards with 550 right now. First in completed air yards. I know Field likes that stat.
right.
And 8th in QBR. So he is performing as an actual quarterback, and this week he's going to deliver as a fantasy quarterback. Listen, I'm all in on Brock Purdy.
Love it. Love
I'll
it.
take Joe Burrow, another quarterback here. Joe Burrow set up in a great spot on Monday night. We've said it several times this week, but the Commanders have allowed the most passing touchdowns of any team in this young NFL season, 6 so far. They have yet to pick off a pass. They really struggled to generate pressure on opposing quarterbacks. Beyond that, Joe Burrow, 0-2, pissed off right now. I think he wants to right some wrongs. He could have T. Higgins back on Monday night. I think Jamar Chase is set up for a masterful spot as well. If the Bengals don't look... They need to win on Monday night, but if they don't look the part as well while winning, my concerns about them will be very, very real for what it means for the rest of this season. I think they look the part. I think Joe Burrow is a total star on Monday night. He's my quarterback 2 for the week.
Wow.
Don't forget, 2 Monday night games.
That's right.
Yeah, baby.
Here's my question. By the way, nice Stan Flashes shirt. I like it.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Complicated patterns. Are you going to make it through 2 games? Are you gonna make
Yes,
it?
I will.
You're going to be awake for game 2?
I'll make it.
All
Yeah.
right. All right.
I'll make it.
Like a 5-hour energy or something like that.
I like
Will help
that.
you get
Yeah.
there? Yeah.
You know, it's the hardest part right now is that it's not comfortable to sit on couches right now with this slate. It's much easier to sit on a recliner, and I don't have a recliner in front of a TV.
Well, if you did have a recliner, that's just recipe for falling asleep halfway through the game.
I'm pretty good at doing that just in general.
Just by yourself.
That's why I asked. I mean, the double. What time does the second game start?
Yeah, regular time. 8:15.
Yeah, it's a
Oh, okay,
staggered.
okay.
7:30
Oh,
to
right.
8:30.
Yeah,
okay.
it's
Yeah.
staggered
For
start.
what it's worth, I don't want to say negative things about our network, but like I would much rather have a 6 o'clock game and then a 9 o'clock game and play them as an actual doubleheader rather than like 2 games.
You're
stacked
on the
top of
East Coast, Daniel.
That's why.
See, we have to be fair to our friends on the West
No,
Coast.
they would love that. If you work till say 5 o'clock out there, you could put the game on your phone, right, while you're at work. I mean, that's a great way to finish the day of work.
I agree with Mike.
Yeah.
I'm with you on
2
that.
hours, you're like, yeah, this
All right.
end of this day will go.
I'd
quick.
like a doubleheader as well, like noon and 3 p.m.
There you go.
That would be
There you
great
go.
for me, but yeah.
You really are a dad, aren't you?
My start of the week this week is Kyler Murray. I think you started to see that Marvin Harrison Jr. connection last week. Trey McBride already established there, 4th amongst quarterbacks, in rushing yards, 3rd in fantasy points. I do expect the Detroit Lions to give James Conner a tough run. I mean, this is what they do is they're really tough against running backs. But Rushing quarterbacks is a different story. I've watched enough Justin Fields back there to be able to give the Lions fit. So I think this is going to be a very big one. One of 3 outdoor games for the Detroit Lions this year. But
Are you confirming the roof is closed?
I do not know if it will be open or not. Hopefully it is.
Arizona had a 100-plus day streak of being at least 100 degrees. So whether the roof is open or closed, it'll be pretty good weather for them.
It'll be nice. It'll be nice.
Here's the thing. Kyler Murray looks like Kyler Murray used to look. Like, it's phenomenal. I'm so happy for him being back after that ACL injury and running freely. You really see that switch that flips when guys are no longer thinking about their knee and they're just playing.
He's just out there reacting, doing Kyler Murray things again. I loved being able to see that with his legs. Would love to see it a little less this week, just for my Detroit Lions' sake, but I still think he's going to mash here.
How about if he does a lot and then the Detroit
Lions
still
answer?
Win?
Yes.
We need offense this week.
Exactly.
You're right, guys.
Bring the offense back.
That could be a 38-35 game
That'd
for
be fun.
sure. I mean, we'll take that.
Lots of fantasy opportunity.
Oh, that is my hope. All right. Make sure, as we said, there are so many injuries this week. Unfortunately, Stephania is going to be super busy on fantasy football now. 10 a.m. Eastern to 1 p.m. Pacific. 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2. We will see you guys there. Thank you so much for watching Fantasy Focus Football, presented by NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. Don't forget to love each other, be kind to yourself, and good luck here in Week 3.
Should have done this. Great.